Kyle Chambers, welcome back for another episode of TQA Quality Minute. What we'll talk about today is process procedures. Specifically, you want to have some uniformity between your process procedures. And the best way to do that is with a good standard template that is outlined and repeated over and over. So the first thing I always start with is a purpose statement. You want to know why this procedure exists in the first place. If you're having a hard time defining the purpose statement, there's a good probability that either you're attacking this the wrong way or you may not need the document at all. The next is the scope. Let's be honest, scope creep is a big problem sometimes. And what can happen is that the scope of this document, say supplier approval, well, that could start to move into material traceability, and it could start to move into calibrations and their traceability, and it can move into lots of other areas that maybe aren't specifically controlled by our supplier approval procedure. So we're going to identify our scope. What does and what does not this procedure include? Next is responsibilities. Truth be told, you might not be able to write the responsibilities clause of your procedure until the whole thing is finished. But I do like to leave it here at the top because when someone references a process procedure, one of the first things they need to know is who's responsible for making sure that this gets done and what are those responsibilities. So we make sure that the responsibility is at the top of the document, even if it's not the first thing we write. Now we talked about scope, some of the scope creep. So what we want to do is we want to come down here and we want to identify our definitions. We want to identify our references. Again, these are things that you're going to take a look at when you first look at the document. And the references clause here in clause 5 ensures that we don't have so much of the issue with scope creep that sometimes we might otherwise. And the definitions ensures that any of the industry jargon or terms that we use throughout the document are very readily and easily understood. Lastly, we get to clause 6 where the actual procedure occurs, what the step-by-step is, and things of that nature. And so we'll line it out so that we end at clause 6, but then we may have subclause A and subclause B and C, and even within that, you may go into greater detail to elaborate and describe the process more appropriately. But what you're going to wind up with is a standard method that your folks can use and rely on time after time to make sure you get the job done.